Hi, and welcome to my Genshin Impact guide. Now, before I get into the main part of the video, there are a few things you should know beforehand. First of all, I haven't spent any money on this game, so while I do know of course what you can spend money on, I don't have any insight into what's the best to spend money on or what's worth the most or anything like that. Secondly, if you haven't finished about the first Archon quest or haven't even started playing the game yet, then nothing I say will really help you at this point, because you still haven't really gotten into the main part of the game yet. But of course, feel free to watch. And finally, just to avoid confusion, when I say level, I'm talking about character and weapon level rather than adventure rank. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. So first of all, I feel like beginners tend to overlook leveling up their character talents. So this is for your normal attack, your elemental skill, and your elemental burst. As you can see here, my Zhongli has a burst that deals 835% damage. Now for those wondering, at level 1, it's about 400%, meaning it's over double the damage just from leveling up the character talents. So this is why I say it's a good thing to do. Now, as you can see here, for leveling up character talents, so for the first stages, it's usually just getting a specific reward from a domain and getting a certain drop from an enemy. However, as you get into later stages, as you can see here, you need weekly boss drops, and for the final level, so for leveling it up to level 10, you also need a crown, which you can only get in certain situations. They're quite hard to get. And as you can see here on my Nahida, it says max level reached for level 10. However, of course, you may notice that some characters have talents going above level 10, and that's because of their constellations. Now, constellations are gained through getting the same character again. Apart from Traveler, you get the Traveler constellations differently. Now, as you can see here, when I changed my Traveler to Electro, for those wondering, to change your Traveler's element, you have to just go to a statue of a certain nation and then go up to it as the Traveler, and you should get an option to resonate with an element. One stat is Anemo, Liyue is Geo, Inazuma is Electro, Sumeru is Dendro, Fontaine is Hydro, and these two nations haven't come out yet, but Natlan is Pyro, and Snezhnaya is Cryo. So as you can see here on the Electro Traveller, the material needed to level up the normal attack is different to the one required for elemental skill, for example. However, like I said, normally you just need a certain one of those domain rewards for a character. You don't usually need multiple ones. Now, another way you can kind of improve a bit is by following these little challenge things in the Adventures Handbook. Now, as you can see here, you get Adventure XP and also extra Primogems and artifacts. But as I talked earlier about domains, you can check here for what domains are actually out today, because for character talent materials and weapon essential materials, they're not always there every day. They always change because there's so many of them. And also here for the trance domains, these are what people call weekly bosses. So if you're a beginner, you wouldn't have officially unlocked them, but I believe you can do a quick fight thing to start off with, and that's just a way you can get the rewards without having to actually unlock the boss first, because they are all unlocked much later on. And the other thing I just wanted to bring up with the Adventures Handbook was the way you can check how to navigate enemies, and also to check when bosses respawn. They usually take about 2 to 4 minutes usually to respawn, and so as you can see, I've just killed this weekly boss, which if you're wondering, they all have a unique drop which is used to ascend characters. As you can see here for Fremine, he needs the drop of the normal boss I just killed. As you can see here, you can open the map and actually click on them. You don't get the option to navigate, which means they haven't respawned yet. But you can also go to the enemies in the Adventures Handbook and scroll down to the boss you just killed, and it'll say 2 minutes to respawn. Now, next thing I'm going to talk about is gadgets. Now, the more useful ones tend to be gained through reputation quests, but out of the main gadgets that are actually useful, you have treasure compasses, which are used to find treasure chests in specific regions. Resonance stones, which show you where oculi are if you're somewhat nearby them. There's also ones such as this Boon of the Elder Tree, which when you activate it, all the trees nearby you give all the wood that you'd normally get from hitting them. And then there's a few random ones like this instrument, for example, that you can play. And Fireworks Launcher. That one's exclusive, so I don't think you'd be able to get it anymore. The ones that are really useful are the ones I'm about to show here. So this first one is gained through, I think, the Inazuma reputation quests. And it means you glide faster for, I think, maybe 30 seconds. And then this one's gained through Fontaine reputation quests, and it sends you up a bit while gliding. Now, as you can see here, a little demonstration of how much faster you go with the wind glider. I think it's 30% faster. And one other thing with the Adventures Handbook is this guide section. Now, after you complete Act of an Argon quest, you actually get these 3 rewards here. But also these things here can advise you on what to do next if you're not sure on what to do. And then there's also another section called In Battle. If you follow those, you can get 4-star artifacts, which can usually be quite useful at the beginning of the game. And then another thing I was just going to talk about is co-op. Now, first of all, each character has a passive talent, and each of these passive talents are just something that happens while your character's in that party. And the one thing I just wanted to mention was these characters, so Amber, who has the glide and stamina reduction, and Kaya with the sprinting, for example. In co-op, your teammates don't get that. Only you get the stamina reduction. Now, something I should probably also mention is elemental reactions. This is something that can really help you against enemies. As you can see in this example, the damage I deal to the enemies when I'm combining elements is a lot more than what I do here. And when I then swap to Nahida here, I then do way more damage. So yeah, just bear in mind if you're still trying to choose characters or teams that you should also try and combine your elements. And also remember to actually swap between them during combat and not stick to one character. Something else I feel like I should mention is the trial runs. As you can see here, if you get a character that's in the trial run, the materials they require for the ascension is actually the same amount you get from the rewards of trials. And just one other thing while I'm on the topic of trial characters and getting new characters. 5-star characters aren't always the best characters if you're ever wanting strong characters. As you can see here in the trial run, all of the characters I use here are all 4 stars. 3 of them are ones that you get for free as well, and I just dealt all that damage just with them. So one thing you should really know is that whether a character is 4 or 5 stars, you shouldn't just be focused on them because of that. Of course, that being said, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for 5 stars if you want to get them, but all you should bear in mind is that you shouldn't go for a 5-star character just because they're a 5-star character. You should go for a character because they're that character. Now, the first thing I'd like to talk about is daily commissions. These are 4 quests that you get every day. They're completely random for what you have to do. The only thing you can choose about them is what nation you do them in. You can even choose to have them all scattered across the world if you want. And yeah, some of them are very annoying to do. They have a bunch of dialogue and they just feel pointless doing, and you have to do them over and over. It's very boring. But other than that, they are usually quite quick to do. It's typically combat. You usually just have to fight like a few enemies and it's already done. And then once you complete all 4 of them, you can talk to Catherine at the Adventurers Guild, and then you can get an extra reward from her. So I'd heavily recommend doing these every day if you're able to, because you end up getting 60 Primogems every day, along with Adventure XP, Friendship XP, even a bit of Mora and ore for leveling up your weapons. So it's very useful because since you get 60 Primogems in total, you get 3 wishes, so like 3 fate, every 8 days just from them. However, if you do find the dailies absolutely horrible and you just can't bear to deal with them, there is a way around it with something that fairly recently came out called Adventure Encounters, I believe. And I think it unlocks at AR 35, and it basically means you can skip the daily quests. You still get the rewards and everything, but you can just skip them by just opening chests or doing reputation quests or even the story and Archon quests. Now, another thing you can also do is go to the Adventurers Guild and send characters on expeditions. I'd recommend doing it for the maximum time of 20 hours, because then you can get the maximum amount of rewards, and it means you only have to do it every time you go on to do your dailies. And as you can see here, I used 2 characters to get Mora, and the other few to get ores. It's also very useful for some of your characters to collect these ores on the expeditions, because it also means you can get that daily quest on the battle pass to collect ores, because they count for mining the ores. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is Resin. Now, this is basically something that recharges. You get it every 8 minutes, and the maximum you can have is 160 of it. So it fully recharges across 21 hours and 20 minutes. Now, I'd really recommend using this. Try to never let it reach the maximum if you can, because this is very valuable. If you want your characters to get stronger, you need this, because it's used to get the rewards from normal bosses, weekly bosses, ley lines, domains. So, something that you can do to avoid reaching the maximum amount of resin if you're not able to actually play that much is by crafting 40 of it into condensed resin. Now, you can only hold up to 5 condensed resin, but it saves you a lot of time. It gives you about double the rewards of what you'd get for 20 resin, and of course, you only have to use it once per reward that you get, meaning you effectively save half the time doing it. Now, condensed resin is a reward from the Leeway reputation rewards, and the only thing you can't use it for is rewards from the bosses, so normal and weekly bosses. They, no matter what, require 40 resin and 60 resin. 30 if you haven't reached the weekly boss limit of 3. For those who don't understand that, basically the weekly bosses are what you need to get character talent materials. That's what they're mainly for anyway. And normally they cost 60 resin to get the rewards from. However, for the first 3 rewards you get from the weekly bosses, it's half the cost, so 30 resin instead. However, of course, this is only once per weekly boss you can get the rewards from, hence the name weekly boss, of course. Now, before, weekly bosses were unlocked through the Archon and story quests. They still are. However, you can actually fight them before you officially unlock them. by basically doing a quick fight thing with it. I don't think you can do that in co-op, but you can do it in single player, and it means that you don't have to go through all of the quests just to, like, you know, level up a character you just got. So that's very nice for you new players. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is probably what most of you are here for, which is Primogems. So most of you probably already know this, of course, but Primogems are used to essentially get new characters and weapons. So you can craft 160 of them into either Intertwined or Acquaint Fate. Now, Intertwined is always the better option because the Acquaint Fate only gets you the standard banner and the beginner banner, and the characters from these banners are ones that you can also get from the event banners, which are the ones you get with the Intertwined Fate. So that's why event banners are always recommended over the ones you always get, of course, because you essentially get all the characters and weapons you were already able to get on top of getting other 5-star characters or the increased chance at a 4-star character that you want. However, most of you here probably already know about that stuff. So, here's the actual part you're probably here for, which is on how to get Primogems. Now, there are many ways. First of all, to be honest, the easiest way, for sure, is by spending money. You can do this by buying Genesis crystals, which you can convert into Primogems. You could buy the Welkin, which gives you Primogems daily, I think. You can get the Battle Pass, which gives you plenty of Primogems and Intertwined Fate. However, of course, spending money is not needed at all. After all, I have multiple 5-stars, and I haven't spent a single penny on this game. So the way I've done it is through daily commissions, as I've said earlier, the Battle Pass. Now, when I say Battle Pass for free to play, I mean as in the 3 tiers, of course. This is only for Acquaint Fate, unfortunately, so it's not as good. You can also get Primogems from the Spiral Abyss. I will get into that a bit more later in this video. You can also get Primogems from the events. These are really recommended because, of course, they are only there for a limited amount of time. Now, of course, there are other ways. Achievements, for example, can vary between giving you like 5, 10, sometimes even 20, just from a single achievement. You can get Primogems even from adventure rank rewards, but of course this isn't really that reliable because you only rank up every now and then, and when you're at my kind of stage, it's every like 6 months or something. It takes ages. Now, the lesser known ones are, in my opinion, the trust rank from the teapot and the daily check-in on the Hoya Lab app on the phone.
Don't rush.
One of the ways that you can also get Primogems though is just exploration. Most chests give you around, it's not that many, it's only about 2 Primogems typically, just for a normal chest. However, if you do a lot of exploration, you will eventually get a lot of Primogems. In fact, when I've really wanted to, you know, get Primogems because I've wanted to get as many wishes as possible, I simply just go looking for chests everywhere. Sorry, just interrupted myself from the past here for a second. I forgot to mention that you can also get Primogems from leveling up the statues of the 7, which are done by finding oculi.
Unsolicited. all the more valuable for it.
Now, some other tips and tricks I haven't mentioned so far are to do with, for example, the teapot that you get after doing a quest in Leeway. If you talk to Tubby, you can collect realm currency and friendship XP for free. And the higher your adeptal energy, as in the amount you've placed in your realm, the more friendship XP and realm currency you get per hour. And with this realm currency, you can also then eventually spend it on Hero's Wit or Resin that lasts a week, as in like 60 Resin that you can redeem. And also more enhancement or even sanctifying essence, which you can use to level up artifacts. Now, every week from Friday to Sunday, there's this teapot traveling merchant who appears somewhere in your teapot, and from him, with realm currency, you can buy other things. Now, normally it's just stuff in the teapot, but you can also buy spin crystals, which you may have also noticed that you can find across the map. You can get this thing on your realm, so I forgot the name of it, but if you go to it, you can then use the spin crystals to then redeem this music that you can then play. Another thing you can also do in the teapot is plant these seeds into these fields or ponds, and from that you can then get the flowers or plants from those seeds. And to get these seeds, you can either buy them from Tubby, or using the seed collector gadget, you can go to plants in the world and collect the plants to then get their seeds. So, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the Spiral Abyss. This is something I mentioned just now, where you can get Primogems. So, basically, it's like a domain. However, you're typically put with stronger enemies than what you're used to. And as you get onto the later floors, you have to use 8 characters instead of your typical 4. However, of course, it's 4 characters in the different parts of the level, rather than, of course, like using 8 characters altogether. Of course, you may be thinking, oh, but I can only play each floor once and get the rewards. This is only the case for up to floor 8. From 9 to 12, they reset every month or so, and from this you can then get 150 primos per floor every time it resets. Meaning if you complete the whole thing, you'd get 600 Primogems each time. Now, this is when we get into a more complicated part of Genshin. This is on how to get your characters stronger. So, first of all, the most obvious way is of course by leveling the characters up. Now, I'd say the hardest part about that is probably fighting the normal boss that drops materials required for that character. However, typically the normal bosses aren't really that difficult. What you really have to watch out for is what element the boss is assigned to. The general rule is that the character you're trying to level up isn't very good against the boss, because they use the same element as that boss. So try and use characters that work around that element. And then you might be wondering, once your character is at the maximum level, oh, why isn't my character that stronger? Well, it's probably for either you not having a good weapon, you not having the right kind of artifacts, or not leveling up your character talents. Now, the more simple ones, of course, from these three are leveling up your weapon and your character talents, because of course you just have to get the materials. Artifacts, on the other hand, are what makes it complicated. Now, the general rule is to first of all find the right kind of artifact set for that character, depending on how you use the character. And then from that, getting the right main stats for the artifacts. And then from those, getting good substats. However, in quite a lot of cases, prioritizing the stats can be better than the actual set. Because let's say you had an artifact where each time you leveled it up, the substat that went up was, let's say, crit rate, like a very good substat to get leveled up, and the main stat was on perhaps elemental mastery, then for a character like Nahida, that would be amazing. It would probably be way better than any artifact of the same type for Deepwood Dreams, for example, which is typically her best set. Now, one other thing that could be the reason behind what makes your characters not seem like they're strong, or anything like that, could actually be your team. Now, I don't really like to tell people what characters they should and shouldn't use, or what teams are best or anything, because I myself don't really tend to like to do that kind of stuff. I tend to just do what characters I like. For example, those of you who've watched me a bit may know that in terms of the characters I'm trying to get and stuff, they are just the Archons. I don't really have any good reason for it, to be honest. I just thought it would be cool to get all the Archons. And so they just happen to be quite strong. But even if they were weak, I wouldn't really care about it. I'd get them because they're Archons. So what I'm trying to say is, don't just get what character people tell you to get. You can if you want a strong character, but if you actually prefer getting, like, you know, characters that you like, do that over what anyone else tells you. Like, you can take this quite a casual way. You don't have to be all serious about it. But if we're going in terms of a team that deals good damage, the best thing to do is have a character that does the main damage, aka the main DPS. In this case, it would be one that has all their abilities being related to, well, dealing damage. And then you want at least one character who either heals or puts up a shield. So in my case it's typically Zhongli, because those of you who play probably know Zhongli's shield is very strong. You can also use, especially for you newer players, Noelle. I believe she's quite an easy one to get because she's from the beginner wish, and you're guaranteed to get her. However, if you don't want to use a shielder, there are some very good healers you can easily get. For example, Barbara, of course. You get her for free. And then, for your other two characters, you tend to want a sub DPS kind of thing going on with them. So, in the team I typically use, it would have been Farina and Nahida. So, Farina, her main ability is to summon these little, like, water minion things who deal damage even when you change characters. And then for Nahida, of course, any elemental reaction causes dendro damage, like just does extra damage, meaning I can then do damage with Yan Fei while I'm also getting, like, Farina's minions to do vaporize and all of that, so it's very strong. So for beginners, I'd recommend a character like Kaya, for example, because his burst has those ice shard things, can't remember what they're called, so that's very good for sub DPS. And then perhaps Lisa, for example, her burst also gets out that, like, lantern thing. Now, before I get started with giving my tips on how to fight weekly bosses, I'm gonna first say that to make it a fair fight, I swapped Zhongli out with Barbara, just so that I also dodged the bosses, so that I know what things you should watch out for. However, of course, because I rely on Zhongli, there were a few difficulties. However, we got there in the end. Now, the first thing before we get into any fights is to completely heal up and revive all your characters. For that, I'd recommend going just standing at a statue. For those who don't know, just going to a statue completely heals you. Now, the first weekly boss is Andreas. You unlock him through doing Razor's story quest, I believe. First of all, don't use cryo or animo characters against him because that he's immune to them.
Who sleeps early? The Temple of Wisdom. Let my name
Andrea deals cryo damage.
motion to compel.
So, as you can see here, you can get frozen if you use Barbara's healing. And so the first thing I'd advise trying to do is, as you can see, when you do enough damage to him, he goes into this weird run-in phase. And if you can, hit him while he's doing that.
I see everything. Let's
And then once he does it twice, his next one then jumps and he then goes into this cutscene where you can't attack. During that time, you could maybe try and heal yourself.
everyone help me.
And so you simply have to dodge his slash attacks and his little wolves that then jump at you. For the next boss, it's Storm Terror. You unlock him through the final Mondstadt Archon quest. Now this one's a bit different, of course. First of all, you can't even fight him in co-op, and he doesn't have any elements that he's more resistant to or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about what character to use specifically. Now here, I'm sorry to say, but I killed him a bit too quickly. But simply put, you have to avoid his attack thing here because, as you can see, Yan Fei actually got hurt quite a bit. Now, something not many people seem to know is you can actually climb on him for this part with the crystal. So simply do as much damage to the crystal as you can, and he's already done. The next boss is Child. You get him through the, I think, the final Leeway Archon quest. The first stage is quite easy, you just dodge his attacks with the water. And then he turns into Electro, usually does these little dash things at you. But overall, you probably will be fine in the first parts, because he's not really that strong. Second stage, however, you have to watch out a bit more. He does this weird, like, spinning electro attack, and then he also dashes a lot more. However, of course, he's still not really that tough. But one thing that wasn't shown there was this really big whale attack, and if you get hit by that, you usually get one shot. And when that happens, you simply just have to either get close to him or just to the edge of the arena. Now the next boss is Ajdaha. Get it from Zhongli's second story quest. Now for this one, I really would recommend using a shield character. I really wouldn't recommend doing what I did here of using Barbara, because especially later on, he uses attacks that really ruin you if you don't have a shield. For that, I would recommend using possibly Noelle if you don't have any other characters. Now, overall, he doesn't really have any elemental resistances, so it doesn't really matter which characters you use.
Today, you witness your reckoning.
Go, Barbara, go! Hey! May I present? Make yourselves a move.
Now, one thing to watch out for, of course, is when he does his big slams, as you can see here, because they just deal massive damage if you're not ready for them. Now also, as you can see here, he gets into this like animation where you can't do anything, a bit like how it was with Andreas. If you can, like I did, try and do some kind of heal if you have a healer, just because it's time that you can use that's normally wasted. And also, of course, if you don't want to use a shield character, it would probably be best to use a character with a bow and deal all your damage from there. For example, using Ganyu or a character like that who deals a lot of damage with charged attacks. Now, next boss is Signora. She unlocks through the final Inazuma Archon quest, I believe. Now, in her first stage, she has cryo resistance, and in her second stage, she has pyro resistance. So it's best to use any characters other than cryo and pyro if you want to deal the most damage. So yeah, like quite a lot of bosses, the first stage is usually the easier one. Now, a trick I tend to use with Zhongli, which of course I don't use here, is to just put his pillar by this ice crystal that she's in, and then collect the crimson moths, because his pillar would then deal the damage the moths do, and you don't have to worry about actually attacking it. Otherwise, it's probably best to just use any character and then just, yeah, collect the moths and then attack. Now for the second stage, there's not really too much to it other than just dodging her attacks. Keeping your distance. When she gets out her whip, you just have to dodge it in time if you're close to her. So yeah, overall just try and keep your distance against her. And then, usually when she's close to being killed, as you can see here, she then like takes maybe 20 seconds or so, just doing this weird spinning thing. In those situations you just have to stay by the container things, I don't know what these are called, but the four things in the corner. And then once that happens, you just have to try and do as much damage as possible. Although do watch out, of course, because you do burn very quickly in that final stage. And that's it. Now the next boss is the like Raiden Shogun clone thing, forgot name. You unlock her after doing the second story quest of Raiden Shogun. Now, up until she goes into her mech suit, you just have to keep your distance again, a bit like with Signora. You just have to really watch out. Whenever she gets out her sword, or looks like she's about to do anything, she is probably about to attack you. And then with these illusion things, look out for the attack that has these two slashes like an X, because that's where the real one is, as you can see here. Now, for this fight, she doesn't have any kind of elemental resistance, so there's no character you have to use specifically, or avoid using. And for this stage, when the swords rain down, don't do what I did, because you can normally get one shot if you don't use the burst. Or something like that. You usually just have to keep your distance there, and go to the edge, roughly. And then, when she's in her mech, you just have to keep attacking her. As you can see here, because of course I rely on Zhongli, I tend to just tank things. So instead in these cases I've just been saving my burst to use it to avoid getting attacked. For this stage, it doesn't really matter if you have an electro character, you can usually damage it in time as long as you do elemental attacks. For me, Nihida tends to just get it done quickly. And then once her mech goes, and she goes into this stage, she's actually weakened, meaning you do way more damage. And yeah, just try and do as much damage as possible during this stage. If you have a character like Nahida, try and use her burst just before you attack. Alright, the next boss is Scaramouche. He unlocks some point in Sumeru Archon quests. And for the first stage, I kind of cheat this one a bit. I don't do what you're supposed to do here.
That divinity is mine.
Even Hoping, motion to compel. Let's dance. The Temple of Wisdom.
Normally, you're supposed to charge up your little flying green thing here with these crystals that spawn behind you. Well, behind where I am here. And when you then charge them up, you want to go on the electro circles on the ground, and then that would stun the boss, and then you can attack him in that stage.
At my command, you shall fall.
And then the second stage, of course, is where the real fight is, in my opinion. Also, one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning is he has electro resistance in the first stage, and even more electro resistance in the second stage. So try and avoid using electro characters if you can. And then when these things fall down, yeah, just try and destroy them because they give you the crystals.
Go, Barbara, go.
And then once you charge that up, you then attack him with the flying thing again. Sorry, I never really remember the names for these things. But yeah, while he has that white shield, don't bother actually attacking him. It's better just to dodge and like heal up and do all of that kind of stuff.
I'll protect us.
Reality is pain.
And once you destroy his shield, he then charges up his big like one-shot attack here. During that time you have to destroy these drones. You have to destroy all of them because they only drop enough crystals for that one attack. And then once you do that, you can then jump up to him with this. And during this stage he's actually weakened, so try and do as much damage as possible, like with the Raiden boss.
Echoing song. Make yourselves a move. Inadmissible evidence.
And yeah, if you can pull it off in time, you might be able to actually beat him just in that one go like I did there. Now next boss is a pet, well rather the immune system of a pet, that's what people call it anyway. It's from completing Nahida's second story quest. Now this boss has Dendro resistance in both stages, so it's best to try and avoid it using Dendro character here. However, of course, because I've got Nahida, I don't really care.
Let the show begin.
So in the first stage, you just kind of have to do your typical fighting, you know, dodge attacks. There's nothing real special to it.
Incinerate. Wrap up the flame. Time to shine.
And then once you kill this part of the boss, it will then disappear. And then also, like I've said before, while you're stuck in an animation like this, if you can, try and get your heal before so that you can then heal while you're waiting. And then yeah, during this stage you kind of just have to attack these random enemies. Now there are some who are different to normal ones.
I see everything.
This one here, for example, wasn't able to be attacked until you killed all the ones it was linked to.
Everyone hold hands. Here in my life. Aligning, echoing song. Shout from room. I see everything.
This one here, for example, just puts up a shield. This one can be a bit of a pain to deal with. It sometimes just rushes at you. It can actually seriously hurt you. And then it wasn't shown because I killed it a bit quick, but I believe there was also one that stops all the other ones from dying until you kill that one. Now, in the second stage, as it says here, you have to go in these shields. Try and go in them as quickly as possible, of course, because you can seriously get injured from it. This is one of the few bosses that I actually have died as Zhongli with, because it's dealt so much damage. But overall, again, you just have to do a bunch of dodging, and you eventually kill it. Now, the next boss, as of right now, is the final weekly boss, the Narwhal. It's from doing the final Archon quest of Fonte. This boss has Hydro resistance for, like, the big whale, and Electro resistance for the second part, with the, like, person that attacks you. So yeah, of course, try and avoid using Hydro and Electro characters if you can. Now, for this stage, basically avoid cracks in the ground, because the whale usually hurts you if you're in that area. But yeah, overall, just try and avoid anything you see on the ground. The actual whale itself only attacks you if it does like a belly flop thing. And also, try and bring a character with... well, try and bring a Fontaine character if you can. Or of course Hydro Traveler, so that you can do the special attacks. Yeah, this is the one I was talking about. This is the one who has the other resistance. Oh, I forgot what I said now. I think it was Electro resistance. And yeah, for this one, as you can see here, my Yanfei almost died there. So yeah, really watch out for its attacks. And yeah, as you can see, having Farina really helped me there, because I was able to destroy that straight away. And then, once you get rid of the white shield thing, you're back to the fighting the whale. Now, during this stage, I do believe the whale is weakened, a bit like a few of the other bosses. So, again, just try and deal as much damage as possible here. And yeah, as you can see, the Hydro resistance really is kicking here with the boss, because Farina is dealing not that much damage, let's just say that. But overall, this stage, as far as I've seen, it's got the same attack patterns and does the exact same things as the first stage. I could be wrong though, so sorry if I am. But yeah, as you can see, just avoid anything you see on the ground, and then eventually you should just be able to take out the boss. And there we have it. That's the end of the video. Now, I don't normally say this, but this video took me a very long time. This is by far the longest it's taken me to make a video. It was certainly a very long one. And for that reason, I really do ask that anyone who made it to the end likes and subscribes. Because that one definitely took a toll on me.